Listening to Megan and hearing all about the program, I was like, okay, I think I can do that. I'll have a house party. So we're having a house party, and it's a greenhouse party because you're going to learn all about better ways of making your homes more efficient. So Megan, Visk, so I always want to put an extra syllable in there. Megan Visk is our consultant, and so she's going to tell you about the program, and with her is Ed, who's going to do the demonstration and everything. So without any further ado, it's yours.
Okay, thank you, May. And thank you again, everyone, for coming. As she mentioned, my name is Megan, and I'm a field organizer for Energy Impact Illinois. So I've been working all throughout the south suburbs, southwest suburbs, working with homeowners and municipal leaders and different organizations to spread the message about our program and what's available, as well as just trying to educate people about energy efficiency in their homes. So today we're going to tell you about our program and a little bit what we do, and hopefully you'll learn a little something about your home as well. Hopefully we can help you out a little bit. Okay, thank you, everyone. Ed, would you like to introduce yourself really quick?
Okay, my name is Ed, and I'm a co-owner of a company called Assured Energy Solutions. I started out in the construction business in '85, actually doing some of the framing and building of newer houses, and when the housing market slowed down, we moved into this type of work, and I spent the last 3 years training and hands-on experience as most people who moved into this type of business, to try to understand what goes on in the house and how to make these corrections. So in a little bit we'll talk about that in a minute.
Okay, thank you. Great. Really quick, let you know the agenda. We already did introductions. Next, I'm going to do a program overview, so I'm going to tell you a little bit more about Energy Impact Illinois. Then I'm going to pass it over to Ed. He's going to do building science, talk a little bit about what's going on in your home, how we can solve some of those problems. Then we're going to do an energy assessment demonstration. So all these weird tools that you saw Ed setting up, the big red thing in the door, he's going to explain what all of that is and how our contractors use those tools to assess your house and to make those improvements and measure those improvements on your house. After that, we'll come back together, we'll debrief, do some question and answer. All of this should not take much more than an hour. In the interest of time, I am going to ask that you try and hold your questions to the end, because we might cover it. And also, if you have any specific questions about your own home, just so we can get through everything, we can talk about those things afterwards. Okay? So first, I'll tell you a little bit about Energy Impact Illinois. Energy Impact Illinois is actually an alliance of a number of organizations, government agencies, nonprofit organizations, as well as the local utility companies. The Chicago Metropolitan Agency for Planning, or CMAP, is the organization that's leading this program. They received a $25 million grant from the United States Department of Energy. It was through their Better Buildings program, and that was a result of the American Recovery and Reinvestment Act. So CMAP then teamed up with a number of nonprofit organizations, the main one being CNT Energy. That's the Center for Neighborhood Technology. They have a specific branch for energy projects. And CNT has been around for over 30 years. They're based out of Chicago. They're an urban sustainability nonprofit organization. They've done a lot of great projects. The local utility companies are also one of our partners. So in this area would be ComEd and NICOR. We also work with the utilities in the city. ComEd and NICOR actually had their own pre-existing energy efficiency programs before we teamed up with them. And their programs are actually ratepayer funded. So what that means is all ComEd and NICOR customers are actually paying into these programs every month on your utility bills. If you haven't noticed, it's probably because it's a really small amount, somewhere between 15 and 30 cents, but you are paying into these programs. And they use that funding specifically for energy efficiency programs to help their customers lower their energy bills and reduce their energy use. So we're working with them to try and reach as many people as we can, and really provide as much funding as we can for these types of projects. A big thing to remember, though, is that Energy Impact Illinois is an advocate for you. We're an advocate for homeowners. We're here to help people who need to make these improvements on their homes. Connect you with the available resources that most people don't know are available to them. And also to hold your hand through the process, make sure you know what's going on, answer any questions, connect you with trusted people who are doing the work in your home. So that's what we're here for. So who qualifies for our program? It is a residential program, so we're looking at single-family homes. Also, townhomes are treated essentially the same way. 2 to 4 unit buildings. If the owner of the building wants to make some improvements, they also qualify. Big thing to note, the program is not at all income dependent, so there's absolutely no income requirements to benefit from this program. As far as what types of things qualify for the program, our main goal is to reduce energy consumption by 15% in each home that we're working in. So we want to have a major impact on your energy use. So for that reason, we're focusing on the types of projects that are going to have that big impact on your energy use without being extremely expensive, because we also want people saving money on their energy bills. So we don't want you to have to spend a whole lot of money up front to make these improvements. We want to make it as inexpensive as possible, get the biggest bang for your buck. So there's 2 things we focus on: air sealing and insulation. Now, most people know what insulation is, right? It's that pink fluffy stuff that you see in your attic. Okay, and then air sealing. When we talk about air sealing, that's all of those leaks and penetrations in your house where those drafts are coming from, where air is escaping. We want to seal those up. So we want to reduce the air leakage in your house. So air sealing and insulation, that combination is going to be the most cost-effective way to make your home more efficient. I'm going to let Ed talk more about the details and why that is in a few minutes, but that's what you want to remember: air sealing and insulation. We can also help people who want to replace their boiler, replace their furnace. There's rebates for those types of things as well. Okay, so how can we help you? What do we actually have available through our program? Well, one, we have information available. We have both a website and a call center. The website is energyimpactillinois.org, and the call center is 855-9-IMPACT. I've got brochures of all that information on there, so don't worry about remembering it. But what you can find there is any information about our program. You can also find a list of financial incentives that are available. All you have to do is put in your area code, and you'll see any financial incentive that's available for energy efficiency improvements, whether it's through our program, through the utilities, through a different organization, through the government. If it's available in your area, you'll be able to find it on there. It's just a one-stop shop, so you don't have to go looking around for all the different rebates and things that are available from different organizations. You can also find is something called My Home EQ. That's an energy calculator. So that's kind of just for people who are kind of interested, want to learn a little more, maybe dip their toe in the water. You can put in some basic information about your house, and it'll give you some estimates on your energy use and also make some recommendations for how you could maybe reduce that energy use. We also have rebates and loans. So as I mentioned before, we want these projects to be as inexpensive for you as possible so that you can start saving money right away. So for that reason, we have rebates and loans to help with the upfront costs. Our major rebate that's offered through Energy Impact Illinois is for 70% of project costs for air sealing and insulation projects, and that's maxed out at $1,750. So to give you a better idea of what the numbers actually turn out to be, air sealing and insulation projects typically cost between $2,000 and $4,000. Last year, the average was $2,500 in the Chicago suburban area. So if you look at the average, a $2,500 job for air sealing and insulation, we cover 70%. That leaves the homeowner with only $750 in upfront costs. That's an instant rebate. So what that means is it's taken off right at the beginning. You don't have to fill out paperwork and wait for a check in the mail. We deal with all of that. It's really more of a discount from your point of view. So you're only paying that 30% of the project costs. Now we also have loans. So some people want to take on larger projects, and so it's going to be more expensive. In that case, we do have loans, and we will pay the first 12 months of interest on those loans. So again, that's a great way to reduce your upfront costs. And the idea is that the savings on your energy bill will also offset those loan payments if you decide to do the loan. We also have reduced cost energy assessments. So before you start making these improvements on your home and spending this money, you need to know what's wrong, what your problems are in your home, and where you can actually make improvements. So that's what an energy assessment is for. Now, if you were to go out and get a private auditor to come and do this assessment of your home, it would be very expensive. It would probably be somewhere between $400 and $800. And that's a lot of money just to find out what the problems are in your home and not actually make any improvements at that point. So for that reason, we have reduced costs energy assessments. We work with an organization called Conservation Services Group. They're another nonprofit organization, and they've got a number of auditors that do these assessments for $99. So a much lower cost. Now, what does this assessment include? An auditor would come into your home. It typically takes about 2.5 hours. It's a very thorough assessment. They'll assess your entire home. They'll use something called an infrared camera, which is actually Ed has one here today, and he's going to show you how that works and how they can use that in your home. They'll also go up in your attic and assess the situation up there. But they'll do a few other things while they're there as well. They'll do some combustion safety testing. So they'll test your combustible appliances, also test for gas leaks in your home. They'll also do some direct install measures. So while they're there doing this assessment, they'll take a few steps to improve your energy efficiency right then and there. They'll replace any incandescent light bulbs with CFLs. They'll also put in low flow shower heads and sink aerators. They'll also wrap your water heater piping in insulation. Also, you have an option if you want to. It's only about a $20 extra charge to get a programmable thermostat. Now, what the programmable thermostat is, they'll install it for you and they'll show you how to use it. And that's what we were talking about before, where you can set it to, make your house a little bit warmer right before you wake up, have it a little colder while you're at work, and it'll warm up automatically before you come home, and that'll lower your energy use right there. Now, after that assessment is done, that same day while they're there, they'll print out something called an energy savings report. And this will detail all the recommendations they're making to your home. Again, it's going to focus on those air sealing and insulation measures. It may include some other things as well. And it'll include also the pricing for those improvements, as well as the rebate costs that will be taken off. So you'll actually see right then and there what it would cost to go forward with any of those improvements. And it's not an all or nothing deal. You can pick and choose. If you want to go forward with some of the measures, but not all of them, you can choose not to go forward with anything at that point. It's completely up to you. If you do choose to go forward with some of the work, we would connect you with one of our trained and certified contractors. Ed here is from Assured, and that's just one of our contractors that's working with us. We do have a number of others. These contractors all apply to our program. They're private contractors from all over the Chicagoland area. They're all required to be BPI certified, which is the Building Performance Institute. This really ensures that they're experts in their field. BPI sets the industry standard for this type of energy efficiency improvements. We guarantee our contractors they've all been properly vetted. We do quality control on all of their work, and if for some reason something's not done perfectly, they're always required to fix it for free. So you don't have to worry about who you're working with. We've already done all of that for you. Okay, so what are the benefits of doing these improvements, of saving energy? Well, one, it's going to save you money. More than half of the cost of your energy bills are going towards heating and cooling your home, especially in the cold winter months and the really hot summer months. So using less energy to keep your home at a comfortable temperature, obviously it's going to cost you less money. On average, 15% energy savings will result in about $500 a year. Again, every home is different. Energy costs fluctuate, so don't get that number too stuck in your head. But that's just to give you an idea of what you might be looking at. Also comfort. So we're talking about some things: cold floors, drafty rooms. All of these things can be solved easily by making sure you have proper insulation and air sealing. So you can turn your thermostat down lower and actually have your home be warmer just by making sure your home is running more efficiently. It can also increase the value of your home. So you can receive a certificate from the Illinois Home Performance Institute. Now this is also with Energy Star, so it's basically like how you would have an Energy Star refrigerator or an Energy Star washing machine, you'd have an Energy Star home. Now this certificate is given to all homes that reduce the energy consumption by 15%. Again, that's our goal. This will include all of the improvements that were made on your home, and it'll also be linked with the MLS listing. So it stays with your home, and it's taken into consideration if you choose to sell your home. And it can increase the value of your home. This is a brand new certificate, but they had a very similar certificate in California, and the Washington Post had an article that it was increasing home value by up to 9%. So it can definitely have a significant impact. It can also make your home a little more attractive. You know, if you're looking in your neighborhood and your home is, you know, more efficient than the others around you, it can definitely be more attractive to people. And then last but certainly not least, smaller carbon footprint. If you're using less energy, it's going to be better for the environment. I actually just learned this statistic that on average, reducing energy consumption by 15% will eliminate 4,400 pounds of CO2 emissions per household per year. That's a lot, just by reducing your energy consumption by 15%. So that's, you know, overall better for everybody and better for the environment. All right, I'm going to pass it over to Ed now, and he's going to talk a little bit about building science and what's going on here in May and Calvin's house.
Okay. So I guess we should probably start by trying to understand what it is that we're trying to make corrections in your house for, or what's happening. Not necessarily scientifically speaking, I'm certainly not a scholar, but being involved in houses as long as I have, since probably 1985, building houses, I'm quite familiar with the house structure itself. But over the last 3 years, having to be BPI certified and going through a lot of certifications, you get to learn the details about exactly what it is we're trying to accomplish when we come in to do this type of work. So what I want to talk about first off is to give you an idea of what's going on in your house. So let's say, particularly in the wintertime, you turn your furnace on, it heats the air in your house. Warm air rises just like hot air balloons. It's called stack effect. That occurs in everyone's house. What we're trying to do, and when we're talking about programs like this, when you heard the words air seal and insulation, when that stack effect occurs and actually rises, if it's allowed to penetrate through the ceiling into the attic level, that's actually money that you just spent to heat the air in your house, which is now going into an attic that no one lives in. It's basically an unconditioned space. That not only does that occur, but as that air is leaving, it basically creates a negative pressure on your house, because just like anything, it's like sucking air through a straw. If you're pulling air from one side, you're going to be drawing air in from another. So as air is leaving, it creates negative pressure that kind of allows air to be drawn in from outside. So in the winter effects, as that cold air is being drawn in, it hits that thermostat again. You turn that furnace on, heats your air, and out the ceiling it goes. The reason that we concentrate on air seal and insulation is very important, don't get me wrong, but in a program like this, it's been determined that air sealing is much more important to the efficiency of your home, of your appliances, your furnace, your water heater, and so on. By having that air exchange in your house actually causes you to have that furnace come on more often than perhaps maybe a lack of insulation. So with a program like this, again, we're not intending necessarily to make a house corrected to the absolute perfect number. As you heard earlier, an average cost of a job anywhere between $2,500 and $3,000. It's not a lot of money, but when you start to consider, how much money you're going to be putting into your house against how much that money is going to save you over the long term, basically in your utility costs. That's where we start to decide, is it worth putting this type of money in? I heard a lot about people talking about their windows. And windows are certainly an issue in most people's houses, especially if they're drafty and they're leaky. The problem that we have in a program like this is windows are extremely expensive to buy, extremely expensive to have installed. It costs a lot of money. When you talk about replacing a single window, let's say a window like this one here, it's fairly large. let's be kind and say that window itself would cost $500 plus the install of a couple $100, maybe $800 for that. The amount of energy that we're going to save by replacing that window is minuscule compared to taking that same $800 and investing it into air seal and insulation in an attic where we have the pressure from the house constantly attacking it, trying to escape as we're firing up that furnace. It's been said that 68% of our energy loss is through our attic, through stack effect. Okay, so that's why we concentrate so much on air seal insulation in a program like this. Megan mentioned it, it's the best bang for the buck. It's the least amount of money we can spend to recoup the most amount of money in the long run. A lot of times people can see a return on their investment in less than 2 years, depending on how much we can make the correction to their house, depending on how leaky it is in the first place. There's been a lot, so to kind of give you a little idea, there is a particular program goal for contractors if they're doing work in their house, is to try to make a minimal of a 25% reduction in uncontrolled airflow. So we start to say, okay, well, how do we do this? Most of these have viewed the blower door over here. That's exactly what that tool does. That tool, we're going to demonstrate it in a minute, allows me to measure how much air I can physically pull through the house. There's a fan on there that creates negative pressure. That fan has a little monitor on it that sends information to that computer that's mounted to the door, and it actually converts the amount of air coming through the fan into cubic feet per minute, and it can measure and calculate it based on a certain pressure to the house. It can calculate how much air I got coming through the house. Now keep in mind, we don't seal houses down to 0 air infiltration because we need oxygen for our appliances to work because they're combustion appliances. They need oxygen for that. We of course are humans, we need oxygen to breathe. Most importantly, we need we need air to evaporate moistures that are naturally caused in the house, whether it's to turn on your faucet, your shower, or just having people breathe in your house. There's been some organizations early on in the process of weatherization. They learned the hard way. They oversealed particular houses. There was some moisture issues with those houses. In a very short period of time after they were done with their work, that house became full of mold. And they were responsible, those organizations were responsible for correcting it. So they actually had to put a lot of money into some of these people's houses to correct the mold problem that they had. So they learned in a hurry, wait a minute, we can't seal them down to perfectly 0. We need to have some way to measure. So BPI of course has the standards, they've done the building science, established every house typically it's based on the square footage of the house. There's a minimum ventilation, what's called a minimum ventilation rate. So a calculation is done, and I kind of just thumbnailed it. I've probably addressed at least 300-400 houses while doing this program, and I couldn't count how many houses I've built. So based just looking at it, I would say that this house is probably somewhere around 2,200 square feet, give or take. 2,900? Okay, so that would put me at, I figured at 1,700 CFMs. So let's go to the high end and say 2,000. So a house like this, again, don't hold me to it, but just thumbnail sketch. A house like this should probably have at least 2,000 cubic feet per minute of air. That can be measured on that blower door. Now typically when we come into a house, very few occasions have I gone to a house where the blower door test-in procedure was completed and we were already at that minimum ventilation rate. There has been a couple occasions in the 200-300 houses I've seen, I'd probably say 3 or 4 maybe, and we had to pack up our things and go home. Because one thing that we don't want to do is we don't want to cause issues. We don't want to cause negative effects on somebody's house, particularly when you're working for ComEd Night Corps. That first and foremost is homeowner safety. So if we showed up and the house for whatever reason is in perfect condition and it's met the minimum ventilation rate, we would obviously not be doing any air sealing or insulation work to it. Okay, so let's get to the 99.9% of the houses that we go to that are well above the minimum ventilation rate. And there's been occasions where that tool could not even get to the proper pressure because the amount of air that we were drawing through people's houses. Particularly those 100-year-old farmhouses are classics for that. We've done a lot of work in Northwest Indiana, the Gary, Indiana area. I think it was post World War II. They had track houses that were being built on slabs, and they were running down the street. And it's my opinion that insulation was some sort of an add-on or an extra or an upcharge back in the day, because almost every house that we address in Gary, there's no insulation. And I mean, none in the attic and none in the walls, no insulation whatsoever. So we were going back and addressing these particular houses, making substantial improvements on the utility costs. I mean, for a house that's less than 1,000 square feet, to have to pay $300 in the month of February is absolutely outrageous. The nice thing about programs like this is it kind of gets people, especially in a setting like this, it gets people to understand that, get them off that comfort, what I call it the comfort level as far as paying your utility bills. I've been paying $125 in February for the last 15 years. I expect to pay that much, maybe a little bit more if the cost goes up the next year. Well, realistically, your house has been that leaky the whole time. You should probably be paying $75, and you will be paying $75 for the next 20 years if you have this type of work to be done. So this is one of the things that we do when we first show up on the job, is we do what's called a blower door test to establish what kind of air infiltration rate that a house has. Our personal record, I think it was in Evanston, we made a 65% reduction in an old Victorian house. I mean, literally, the set point of their furnace was at 68 degrees. The house never reached 64 degrees. The furnace ran 24/7 on the cool days, 24/7. By the time we were done, the furnace was actually cycling. Now, I didn't stick around long enough to know how long it shut off. I just knew it was finally shutting off. It was reaching at 68. Like I said, we made a 65% reduction in air infiltration. That was a tremendous, a tremendous help to those folks that were living there, because again, they're just, I mean, when the furnace doesn't go off, it's a tremendous amount of money.
Oh my God.
Tremendous amount of money.
That's a lot.
Megan touched also on the fact that with the ComEd NICOR program, we do what's called a combustion safety test. So one of the things to keep in mind that with the combustion appliances, your furnace, your water heater, unless it's a 90% efficient where it has the PVC pipe that actually draws air from outside to use for the combustion process and then expels carbon monoxide air back outside, most, those are actually, now it's a new code. They're not even going to be producing anything less than 90% efficient furnaces. So if you're going to have a furnace replaced and you don't want to have to spend the extra money on the high efficiency one, you got to grab them up now, because they're not going to be building them anymore. Furnaces will all be 90% efficient, which is actually better for better for you, better for the environment. Basically, that percentage just means that the amount of gas that it's using, that percentage is being converted into actual heat for your house. So anything less than that, if it's 80%, some furnaces back in the day, if you still have one from the 50s or the 60s, at best you're probably at a 50% efficient, meaning 50% of the gas used in that furnace, half of it's going out the chimney, and the other half is heating your house. So that's the difference between what the new furnaces are compared to the old. If it's not a 90% using like a two-pipe system where it's drawing air in and throwing air out, it's probably using air from the house to allow it to expel the carbon monoxide gas up the chimney. So that's another reason why it's critically important that we measure. We do what's called draft testing, combustion safety testing. We do a draft test to make sure that that furnace and that water heater has enough pressure to get that carbon monoxide out of your house. There's always a potential to reduce the amount of airflow to a point that doesn't allow that to flow properly. These are the type of things that, going through a program like this, having contractors that are BPI certified, that have been through these testing procedures, make sure if you call someone out of the yellow pages, there's a good chance that they may not be doing combustion safety testing. I really don't know any insulation company that does do combustion safety testing. And if you're changing the dynamics of a house, if you're adding insulation, if you're reducing airflow, there's a chance you could be changing how those appliances work. You need to know. One of the things that certainly that we do that when we show up, just to know that they're working properly before we do the work, and then of course, without a doubt, after we leave. All of those tests are documented. They have to be turned into the company that I report to, Conservation Services Group. Then that gets turned into NICOR and ComEd as well. The blower door test is what we use after we're done. We have to justify the work that we've done. If you've spent $2,500, let's see let's see hard, cold facts. Exactly how much have we reduced our uncontrolled airflow? The reason that we have a goal of 25%, or ComEd NICOR has a goal of 25% reduction, that conversion equals the 15% reduction in utility cost. So it kind of goes, right in line. If we can make a 25% reduction in uncontrolled airflow, it's been determined that that will give a 15% savings to you and your utility costs, which would then make you eligible for silver certification. Okay? So it kind of, everything kind of steps down the line. I wanted to show, and she's been so kind to bring me some of these pictures, but really quickly I'll give you a, since we're going to be talking about one of the tools that we use is a thermal camera. Here's a picture of a house under thermography, and you can tell the stack effect that's occurring in here because obviously the red is the warm air, blue is the cold air. So you can see what's happening in this house, how the warm air is rising and actually making it into these attic levels. I don't know if this is living space or not, but you can obviously tell that the lower sections are colder compared to the warmer section. It's a good indication, a good illustration of what stack effect actually is happening here. Here's another picture of something that also occurs with stack effect, and most people are familiar with this. So if you're driving down the street and it has just snowed 6 or 8 inches, and you're driving down, you see snow on the house, all of a sudden you get to one guy and you see his shingles, he don't have snow in the house, he's got an issue going on in his attic. There's a tremendous amount of warm air making it into his attic that's melting the snow on his roof. And the conditions, what happened here is all of this roof area is being heated by warm air from the house. It's escaping into his attic. It melts, pours down in through this valley area, and as soon as it catches the outside where there's no longer a heat source, it starts to freeze. And in this case, this icicle is made a full 8 feet down to the ground. But what's happening behind here, I mean, most people understand what ice damming is. That can make a tremendous amount of damage on a house. Ice damming occurs behind this area, so.
Exactly.
All right, so one of the things we use as a contractor, it's very difficult, as you might think, to locate air that's leaking through a house, even if it's in the smallest. I mean, obviously, every little bit counts, so we have to get into some real specialty tools. This is an infrared camera. Someone once tried to explain to me how these work, and I'm not of the capacity to understand fully. It works somewhere on some sort of a low band of some sort. But I do know that it does identify the smallest amount of temperature difference. The darker areas would indicate a cold spot. The lighter orange areas indicate warm spots, and there's actually there's a meter on the side. There's different ways I can take pictures with this. I can save it to a card. I can email it, make a full report to customers if I was doing an assessment of my own for a client. We as contractors do not do the assessments in a program like this. That would be a bit of a conflict. So CSG does the assessments. They hand us a work order that you've already agreed to with them at the time. It has a line-by-line item that you can go through and decide, this is what I want to repair, this is what I want to repair. We use this to find out where exactly those areas of concern are. In this particular house, I'm going to pass this around, but just kind of wave it around on this attic ceiling area, and you can tell that there's a couple issues to be identified with if you want to just take a peek in that. But without tools like this, it would be very difficult to be able to locate air necessarily. I mean, it's like nailing jello to a tree. It's
What do people with skylights do?
Skylights, are not necessarily bad. In fact, there's a skylight in the kitchen, and I took a look at that, and I could see there's some issues that can be easily corrected, but it's not as bad as what I saw in the kitchen soffit area, which is actually the drop square part above the cabinet.
Oh.
In the kitchen, that's one of the worst areas I spotted in this house as I did a quick walkthrough. There's a tremendous amount of cold air that's being brought up into that kitchen soffit. But that's actually something that we see quite often. What I'd like to do at this point, if you, I don't know if you wanted to come over and just see the manometer as it works, but I have it basically completely set up. I did my baseline test, which kind of zeroes out the pressures from exterior to interior. And I'm going to run this test now to see. Now keep in mind, I didn't do an exact square foot measurement to know exactly what the minimum ventilation rate should be in the house, but we can get kind of an idea of what's going on and see how much air we can pull through by firing this up. So I'm going to go ahead and just stoke this thing up. I think it should be ready to go.
If anyone wants to look up close, feel free to come over and check it out.
please let me come do some work on your house.
Doesn't sound good at all. There's a closed door on the other side.
Any door open, I see?
Is there a door open?
Door and window open, you're aware of? Only the architect.
Feel it coming
Yeah,
down.
you could feel it.
Wow.
Yeah, you're in dire need of this program. All right, so the manometer actually tries to establish what's called a negative 50 Pascal pressure on the house. From that point, it can do this calculation. We're measuring over 5,800 CFM. I think I'm fairly close in saying that the minimum ventilation rate, or what we would call the perfect rate for your house, would be 2,000. So at 2,000 CFM, we would have your house at its most efficient level without exceeding what that safety level that we're talking about. Maintain that minimum ventilation rate. So you're at 3 times the limit at this point. So there's a lot of air. We could definitely spend a lot of time going through the house. And again, consider a 25% reduction in your air infiltration rate is 50%. I mean, it may not be difficult to
I knew it was
50%.
Maybe you look at 30%.
Oh, and even
I knew we
more
had
better.
problems because, one year when it was really cold, we had ice dam that caused, leak, so it dammed up and it was like, everybody thought, oh, it's so cool. The kids thought, oh, it's so cool with all the icicles. And
It looks really pretty in its own way, but it's not cool. Christmas time.
We had a new roof.
yeah,
Backer.
so, well,
All the.
see, our roof was replaced when we first
Yeah.
moved in, so it's at the point of needing
Interesting, huh?
replaced, so,
We have a flat.
Yeah, flat roofs are a bit of a challenge.
wow.
Not impossible, but certainly not impossible. We've addressed them. They just, unfortunately, it's much more labor intensive to try to make corrections in that.
Did you see?
Here's a picture of some actual air seal and insulation work being done. In this case, it looks like they might be blowing some type of a fiberglass material. We don't use any fiberglass in energy efficiency programs. Not because it's not a very good insulator, it is. It has R value just like any other insulation. What it doesn't do is it doesn't stop airflow. We use a recycled material called cellulose, which is basically recycled newspaper. It's been treated to be fire resistant, rodent resistant. The nice thing about cellulose is it's installed at one level. For instance, you may be putting 12 inches of insulation into an attic. After a month or so, it actually compacts itself down to perhaps 10 and a half inches. And by doing so, it prohibits air, not completely, but it certainly reduces the amount of air that can penetrate through it. So if we're in the game of trying to reduce airflow, it's a product that we use because it has a much better air barrier quality to it. And of course, it's a recycled product. We're not manufacturing it. We're not adding to the carbon footprint that we've talked about. It's material that would otherwise be occupying space in a landfill. And we found an extremely viable use for it that we could put a lot of it to use in a lot of houses. I find a lot of houses in dire need of it. But here's a picture of some loose fill insulation being done. And this is also a picture of the air seal. A lot of the air seal that we do in the attics are basically one-part foam, much like the great foam, great stuff that you see at the Home Depot, except we have big fancy applicators and big bottles of it. And we do a significant amount of air sealing around the house. If you're interested to see that picture there.
It can be blown.
The insulation is blown in, yes.
Yeah.
And no formaldehyde.
What is that called again?
No formaldehyde. Cellulose. Loose
Cellulose.
cellulose.
And it really is rodent?
It is said it is treated with a borax, which is said to be. Now, I've seen demonstrations of its fire-resistant property. I've seen a gentleman take a handful of cellulose, lay a penny on the top of it, and then take a blowtorch, melt the penny until it became molten, pour the penny down onto the floor, and the cellulose never caught fire and he didn't burn his hand either. My business partner keeps trying to get me to do that demonstration for somebody at a party. I still won't do it. But anyhow, it looks good on the video. So this is just a small portion of some of the tools, some of the things, some of the items that we use to try to identify. I could spend a while at 6,000 CFMs. I'd like to really go through the house and see where the major source of air loss is in this house. But other than that, that'll be the end. That'll be at the end of my my bit of the presentation.
people want to ask Ed some more questions, we'll wrap up really quick and then we can talk a little bit more. Okay, thank you very much, Ed. All right, really quickly, can I have a couple of volunteers who took a look at that camera? Where were some places where you think you saw some energy loss?
Around the borders,
Okay,
at the junction of the hall.
where the ceiling and the walls are meeting, yep.
Something up there somewhere.
On the ceiling, absolutely, there's some blue spots up there, right? Okay, and I'm sure, I think Mae's she's just taking the camera around and going to hunt down some more spots throughout her house. Okay, so based on what we talked about, does anyone have some different ideas about where they're losing energy loss now in their homes that maybe they didn't think about before, or they didn't think it was as big of an issue?
I have my concern. If you pull that drapery back, that window has, the seal has broken on it. And there is a loss of air there. Plus, under the bottom, the caulking had came out. I could actually see outside before I caulked it this
Oh,
winter.
wow. So there's definite air loss there. Right? Do you think of something?
Surprisingly enough, your electrical plugs sometimes
Absolutely.
are draft.
Oh, yeah, you can just go.
Absolutely.
Yeah, you can feel breezes on those
Absolutely.
electrical plugs. All those little spots in your house. They might seem really small, but when you add them all together, it's actually a lot more air loss than you really think. Sure.
So, what do you do about a flat roof where there's no attic? But there is a little space between the roof and the ceiling.
I'm going to wrap up really quick and then we'll talk a little bit more in detail about that, okay?
Okay.
All right. Okay, so now that we've all learned a little bit something about energy efficiency and about our program, what's the next step? How can people, get started in your own homes? For our program, there's a couple of options. One, you can host an impact house party, just like Mae and Calvin have done here tonight. You can host your own in your house. We ask you invite over 5 to 10 friends, neighbors, family members, anybody who owns a home, and maybe able to benefit from this program. We'll do the same thing we've done here tonight, and then you'll receive a free home energy assessment. So that $99 assessment fee will be covered by us. So Mae and Calvin will be getting their free home energy assessment soon, and then we can really pinpoint those
Tomorrow.
problem areas. Yep, so they'll be having it done tomorrow, so we can really find out what's going on. If people don't want to host these impact house parties, they can pay $99 for the assessment as well. There's a few things I would just like to notify people about. One is this is a temporary program, so the improvements on your house have to be completed by August 26th of this year in order to get the full rebate. After that point, you'll still be able to get some rebate money, but it won't be quite as much because the grant that's funding our program will expire at that point. However, if we're getting involved today, you don't have to worry about not being finished by that point. These projects, I'm sure Ed can tell you, typically take a day or maybe two, not a long time. Also, if you do want to call to schedule an assessment, they're really busy right now, so you might get scheduled for probably May. So, if you are, looking to hold off a little bit before you sign up, just keep that in mind, that it will take a little while to actually get your assessment. But impact house party hosts can usually get their assessments a little earlier. That's just another little perk of helping us, reach a few more people. I do have a sheet. If people would like to sign up today, you can write down your information. Here you go.
What are you signing up for?
You are signing up for me to call you and talk about what you would like to do. So this is not a binding contract. It's just a way for us to follow up with you and hopefully get you started if you are interested in getting an assessment done on your home. Also, please remember to take some brochures. At this point, I think me and Ed would both be happy to take any questions you guys have.